To the special edition of Hannity, the Trump agenda. I'm David Webb in for Sean tonight. President Trump taking aim at allegations of bias at the FBI and blasting the fake news dossier. We'll talk about that in a moment. The president tweeting earlier today, "Wow, at Fox and Friends, dossier is bogus. Clinton campaign, DNC-funded dossier. FBI cannot, after all this time, verify claims in dossier of Russia, Trump collusion, FBI tainted, and they use this crooked Hillary pile of garbage as the basis for going after the Trump campaign." President Trump's tweet appears to be in reaction to reports that during his closed-door congressional testimony, FBI Director or Deputy Director Andrew McCabe failed to specify which portions of the dossier the FBI claims to have corroborated. There's also reported McCabe plans to retire in 2018 amid mounting criticism from Congress. Constitutional law expert Alan Dershowitz weighing in on the scandal, saying that maybe McCabe should have recused himself for any Clinton-related investigations given his conflict of interest. Watch this.
Well, first of all, everybody tells me who knows McCabe and has worked in the FBI that he's a very decent guy and was an excellent deputy director. Having said that, he should have recused himself immediately from any investigation involving Hillary Clinton because of his wife's connections to Hillary Clinton. When you're investigating a presidential candidate, whether it be Hillary Clinton or President Trump, you have to be Caesar's wife. You have to be above reproach. You have to make sure not only there are no conflicts, but there are no perceived conflicts. Not only is there no bias, but there's no perception of bias. And he didn't pass that test.
And in other big news, the Washington Post now reporting that House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is talking with other Republican lawmakers about writing a report next year that would expose alleged, I say alleged, FBI corruption. Also tonight, a stunning report from Politico. James Baker, the FBI's top lawyer, was in contact with liberal journalist David Corn of Mother Jones. And he did this in the weeks before the outlet broke the very first news story about the existence of the anti-Trump dossier. Joining us with reaction, core national spokesman and conservative pundit, my friend Niger Innes, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Daily Caller reporter Kerry Pickett. By the way, all friends, great to see you here. Greg, I'm going to go to you first on this, and let's talk about this dossier for a moment. We'll put a pause on the politics and look at what you would do within the process of vetting information given to the FBI, this dossier, before you would put it to use.
Look, the FBI receives a lot of fake documents all the time. It's up to them to vet it. You can't use it in a court of law unless you've verified its authenticity and confirmed its contents. If the FBI used this dossier in an affidavit in support of a search warrant to spy on the Trump associates, that's a fraud on the court. That's a crime. But you back up several months, and apparently this dossier was also used to launch the Trump-Russia investigation. And they apparently did little or nothing in the way of verifying its contents. So think about this. Funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee, which, by the way, is a crime under the Federal Election Campaign Act, they used this document to then spy and launch an investigation on Hillary Clinton's political opponent. It's beyond the pale of criminal negligence. And some of the people who did this, including perhaps Comey, McCabe, James Baker, Peter Strzok, and others, should be held accountable criminally if appropriate.
All right, Greg, you're talking about this legal aspect, and the process is important. Kerry, the process, however, on the Hill is a little different. You're down there every day talking to the congressmen and senators, so the political aspect of this comes into play. Given what Greg just said, given that Comey admitted that he leaked information, which also is an issue that you've talked about before, Greg, what about the dossier and the use of this in the congressional point of view?
Well, what's interesting here, David, is that anytime I have gone to the Hill and spoken to the lawmakers that are leading these investigations, whether in the Senate or on the House side, you've had Democrats, for example, who have been preparing almost for, and they will never say this publicly, but they've been essentially preparing for what could be an impeachment. Because anytime I have gone up to them and asked them, well, what about the conflict of interest here? What about the Podesta group? What about the issue that the dossier is not verified? The answers have always been, I haven't heard about that yet, or that's not important. On the Republican side, however, you go up to them and say, well, what about, say, the Donald Trump Jr. emails and so on and so forth? They've been more on the defensive, looking to say, what can they do to defend Donald Trump to make sure that he doesn't get impeached? And remember, how did this start? This started off with, oh, my goodness, the Russians ended up meddling in our elections. We have come so far from that, David.
All right, so that's the Hill view, the legal view. Now turning to Niger Innes, our friend out there in Las Vegas. Big gambling out of Democrat quarters, Niger. Kind of fits your town of Las Vegas. But the media has been carrying this, be it Greg's points about the legal aspect of this. We've talked about the process here, I think, more than I've seen on most media, and Greg explained that. Kerry looks at it at the Hill and what they're proposing. What about the media's handling of this?
The media, the establishment media, outside, of course, of Fox News, which I actually don't consider to be establishment, has been egregious in their silence. The Washington Post has this on the masthead, democracy dies in darkness. Well, no, actually, democracy died in darkness with the creation of this dossier. You know, for these never-Trumpers out there and these left-wing folk that hate Trump and suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, I just want them to think about this hypothetical analogy. All right, it's 2008. We all jumped into a time machine. It's 2008. And the John McCain for President campaign prepares a dossier using a former British spy and using intelligence gathered on Senator Obama by Israeli intelligence. That information, that dossier then, is passed off to the Bush Justice Department and/or FBI, and they use this dossier to not only wiretap Senator Obama, but to launch an investigation on Senator Obama. The outrage would be deafening. They would be calling for John McCain to not only be impeached, but be given the death penalty. And so the deafening silence by the establishment media, and the fact is, it's more than deafening silence. They are actually going along with the talking points on supposed Russian collusion based on a dossier, and their entire case is built on a house of cards.
All right, so, you know, we'll stay on the facts here, Greg. Let me go back to you on this. And, you know, who can be charged? Because in the end, whether it's the scenario that Niger used, which is a scenario, or the reality, more to the reality of what's happening now. You talk about how you cannot produce fraudulent documents to a court. Right. A judge can hold you in contempt. Who can be charged in this scenario, in your opinion?
Well, you can start with the people who appear to have exonerated Hillary Clinton for political purposes. That would be obstruction of justice. If that involved Peter Strzok, who apparently changed the critical wording in the exoneration statement, you might also include McCabe as well as James Baker. We just don't know. Congress needs to get to the bottom of it. Wish there were a second special counsel to investigate Clinton, Comey, Lynch, McCabe, Baker, Strzok.
Then you have John Orr, his wife, who worked for Fusion.
Bruce Orr, yeah.
Bruce Orr, rather, his wife. You've got Andrew Weissman. Another. I mean, there's a cacophony of problems here in the sound that's coming out.
Which is exactly why you need a second special counsel. I'm not sure that Jeff Sessions of the Department of Justice, with so many Obama holdovers still there, is capable of actually conducting a fair, objective, neutral investigation. I think there needs to be a second special counsel, and there's more than enough reason and evidence to demand one.
All right, Kerry, so, you know, we don't need the Constitution explained anymore, at least not on this show. Sure. To the audience, about what it takes for impeachment, but you were talking about charges, potential charges, or an idea of who could be charged, and back to Washington, D.C. and impeachment and the politics of this. We're ending the year and starting a new year. Is this going to change for the Democrats in Washington?
I got to tell you, as far as a special counsel being called, right now you already have members of Congress calling for an investigation into the corruption right now in the DOJ into the FBI, looking to purge the problems going on over at the FBI. So I just can't see a special counsel or second special counsel being called right now.
Except the problem is you can't investigate yourself. The FBI is a division of the Department of Justice, and if the corruption extended beyond the FBI into the Department of Justice, with so many people still there, you can't trust them to investigate themselves, which is why I've long argued for a second special counsel. And in fact, members of the House Judiciary Committee have sent a letter to the Attorney General demanding a second special counsel just for this.
Something that Darrell Issa actually has called for as well.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, so let's bring Niger back in this. Again, Niger, big gamble for the Democrats. You're hearing your fellow panelists talk about this legal perspective, political perspective. But, you know, if they were to go to a special counsel, and given the IG's reports that have come out, do you think a special counsel brings us there, or does it prolong and delay the process and the constant back and forth partisan politics, which no, by the way, hinders the president's agenda?
If you have a choice of firing Robert Mueller and ending that special counsel as opposed to bringing on a second special counsel, I lean heavily towards bringing on the second special counsel. Look, Mueller and the Democrats are not going to stop with this investigation. A person recently said, I forget who the commentator said it is merely just the beginning of the or the end of the beginning. So I think what Mueller's investigation is going to continue. It's going to go long past 2018. So I think you need a select and distinct special counsel that can examine the corruption within the FBI and examine how Hillary Clinton partisans, Democrat partisans, refuse to investigate her email and her emails being hacked by foreign entities. I mean, talk about collusion, and the fact that they did nothing to the Clinton campaign and to Hillary Clinton herself, except for, you know, smack her on the wrist. That needs to be investigated, as well as what I think is the most egregious, what we've all been talking about, which is active collaboration, it seems, between a presidential campaign of one party, a sitting government in power, presidency in power, to wiretap a presidential candidate. I mean, my God, I think that's a little bit bigger than even breaking into a hotel room in Watergate.
All right, so let's take that idea to the protection of citizens with Niger, and we're going to go around the table on this one for about 30 seconds each. Greg, to you, whether it's wiretapping, what is potentially, who could be charged. When it comes to special counsel, is there anything that can be done prior to that? Is there anything that the Inspector General can do within the FBI or the whistleblower issue, which is on the table, to actually bring this out? The
Inspector General can only make findings, which can turn into a referral for prosecution, but generally they don't do it. The problem with the IG is they're rather toothless, always have been. It's a historical fact. What you need is a prosecutor. And again, I don't think there are people that I would have confidence in the Department of Justice to ferret out criminality among themselves or the FBI.
So, Kerry, is there anyone on both sides sitting down there in D.C. that you hear from that you say, you know what, they would lead a straightforward investigation into this, a finding of fact, as Greg talks about?
David, as far as I can see right now, that they are simply looking to circle the wagons of their own parties. In this case, Republicans looking to protect Trump and Democrats looking to go after Trump. That's all that's going on right now.
All right, we've got to pause it there, but never a pause for our friends right here, Niger Innes out in Las Vegas. And welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. You know, 2017 has been a very productive year for President Trump. Capped off this month after he signed that massive historic tax cut into law. Of course, tax reform is not the president's only major accomplishment. He successfully appointed a qualified originalist to the Supreme Court. He's rolled back dozens of Obama-era regulations. He's cleared the way for completion of the Keystone XL pipeline and so much more. But if you watch the mainstream media, you'd probably have a very different and a skewed picture of the Trump presidency. Let's take a look at some of the worst moments, yeah, I said worst moments, over the past year.
I have a whole lot to say about this president's increasing erratic behavior over the past week or so.
We have an Archie Bunker-in-chief who is disrespecting American Indians and making classless jokes from the podium.
Is this president trying to impersonate Hugo Chavez, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Vladimir Putin?
Apparently, the president gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone else around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
At the dessert course, he gets 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream with his chocolate cream pie instead of the single scoop for everyone else.
He's gained weight, according to these sources. He doesn't trust people around him. He's withdrawing. Not a good picture.
He's a racist. Okay? He came proverbially as close as you could possibly come to shouting in a rally the N-word. That's what he did down there.
Donald Trump, again, being a schmuck. He looked like a thug. He looked like a goon. You look at the handshake. You look at this. Just what a thug. And you have somebody inside the White House that the New York Daily News says is mentally unfit, that people close to him say is mentally unfit, that people close to him during the campaign told me had early stages of dementia.
I mean, amazing. What you saw is not just a mirage. In fact, according to a study from the Media Research Center, 91% of Trump-related coverage from ABC, CBS, and NBC's evening newscasts has been negative. And despite all of this, the Trump agenda is moving forward, and an Obamacare repeal and replace, well, that could be next. Joining us now, Republican strategist Noel Nickpour, Fox News contributors Ellen Ratner and Jeanine Bure. Ladies, great to see you all. A very belated Merry Christmas to you, Ellen and Noel. I've seen Jeanine enough in the last week.
Hey, David.
You know, I got to tell you something, Ellen. I'm going to go to you first on this. You and I have done a lot of analysis over the years together. Where was the policy disagreement with Donald Trump in what we just played for the audience?
Well, first of all, I think that you're not showing what he tweeted out when he goes after people. I think that, you know, he's supporting the economy, but a lot of those rules and regulations and policies were under Barack Obama. And I think that you were not talking at all about our standing in the world community. And I know you think these people say terrible things, but they probably said, the right wing probably said terrible things about Barack Obama,
but Ellen,
too.
My question was, where was the policy disagreement in there? And I've watched a ton of this. Come on, you and I know this. I watch this daily. I'm fine with policy disagreements. I don't like the ad hominem attacks.
I don't either, actually, believe it or not. I think that when you attack somebody and you say the kinds of things that are said, that's not appropriate. There's plenty that I disagree with President Trump about, and it has to do with policy.
All right, so Noel, let's bring you in on this. You're a Republican strategist. From the strategy point, does this help the Democrats? And if so, how? With this constant left-wing barrage on Trump's character, on ad hominem attacks, rather than pointing out policy failures, when I just read a list of accomplishments that are campaign promises he made, he kept, whether you agree or disagree with them, anyone out there, he's kept his promise.
Right. And you know what? They just will not let President Trump have a victory lap, no matter what. And you know what? You know, Trump really did do this. What he said is what he fulfilled. He fulfilled promises, unlike what President Obama did, which is he got health care through, but it was riddled with low enrollment. You couldn't keep your own doctor. And then now the premium increase is what we're dealing with. And President Trump, when he campaigned on creating jobs, you can check that off. He's about to put money in middle-class Americans' pockets. You can check that off. So he's fulfilling his promises. And what he gets from mainstream media is constant negative. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Donald Trump has to tweet, so he can get his own message out there, because it's been negated so much from mainstream media. All
right, Jeanine Bure is here in the studio with me. Jeanine, I asked Noel about how this helps the Democrats. On the other side, the Republicans and the Republican messaging, the president's successes. There have been a number of successes. They're not the sexy stories. They don't get the headlines, the tweets. I even agree with Ellen that the back and forth off policy is not healthy. But where do the Republicans take this next? How do they tout changes in GDP? Expansion of the economy? How do they do this effectively and sell it even to the underserved communities, no matter what ethnicity they are?
Well, the Republicans need to do that. They need to take that message out there to Americans, to all Americans. I think it's great when President Trump goes out and does a rally for the people, making that FaceTime with Americans, because Americans want to hear from the president. They want to know what's going on with the agenda, and he is delivering on his promises, and that's what the media does not like. The media cannot control President Trump. He is able to go around them. He's called them out how many times? Numerous times. Fake news, very fake news, because the media refuses to talk about his accomplishments that he has been able to make in 1 year, and that is going to help turn Americans' lives around. From tax cuts, lower regulations, these are the issues, the policies that he ran on, that he talked about, and how it's going to be America first and the forgotten men and women. That's what he's putting first.
All right, so let's go back to Ellen Ratner. And Ellen, you've been in the media business a long time. You and I have watched and analyzed campaigns, and we look at what's coming ahead and what they can use. What can the left use effectively if the economy continues to expand, the third quarter over 3.3% growth, the market's at highs, home mortgage insurance interest or home mortgage interest growing 18-year highs, constant changes, and all on the upswing since the president was elected and since he was installed?
Well, first of all, I think that we have to look over the long term and to see if his policies really work. And number two, I think we have to look, for instance, at Obamacare, which he wants to get rid of. But even though they had less advertising and less time to enroll, over 8 million people enrolled this time. So the fact is that Obama policies are still working, and people might not like that. You might not like it, but the facts are the facts.
Okay, well, here's a fact for you, Ellen. Over 80% of the people paying the Obamacare penalty make under $50,000. That's IRS data. By rolling that back, combined with the doubling of the standard deductions for people in lower income brackets, they get to keep a larger portion of their money. They don't get hit with a tax. And to be fair, the Republicans now have to deal with portability and other issues to help the insurance industry and healthcare providers provide a better rate. So if that's the Obamacare working when premiums are going up 200%, 300% almost in Arizona, when there are rate hikes requested for next year by insurance companies starting as low as 25 up to 60%, how are those policies going to be, how are they going to use them as Democrats when people are looking at the reality of what they pay?
Well, I think we're going to have to see how it does play out and whether people really do get health insurance coverage or not. And that's going to see. We're going to see why in Congress do they want to help people with their premiums, because they know that it's a very popular program.
Well, popularity is to be judged by the politics. Noel, quick 15 seconds. Do the Democrats have a case to make next year?
You know what? Here's what I think. I think that it's how can they be critical if they weren't part of the process? And I really resent the fact that the Democrats are very upset about a lot of the policies that we're getting through, or Trump's getting through, when they did not participate, and they don't want to participate in the process. And when we come up on health care and we're going to do that, they need to have a seat at the table, or they can't complain the next time around.
Jeanine, real quick, are the Democrats going to play ball with the Republicans, or is it going to be Schumer crying and Pelosi beating him up with Armageddon?
Well, unfortunately, the Republicans didn't rip Obamacare out from the roots, and now they own it. So the left is clearly going to blame Republicans for the failures that are to come. As we've seen, the rates have gone up. People have lost their health insurance, or they just can't afford it. Republicans will be blamed for it, and the Democrats are just going to sit back and watch. They didn't help on tax reform.
Well, the Republicans better sell success well. That's what I have to say on that. Ladies, thank you very much. Up next on the special edition of Hannity, the Trump administration and Ambassador Nikki Haley. She's doing a great job at the UN. They're taking an axe to the United Nations operating budget. We'll tell you how much they're cutting and why it is sending a major message to the UN that should not be ignored. Ambassador John Bolton and Dr. Bill Parker weigh in. That and more on this special edition of Hannity, continuing next.